Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with a video.
My mother-in-law only loves you as much as you are of use to her. When I was courting my wife, she disapproved of our marriage because I didn't have my finances together then. My wife said that she would manage and we would get through it together. Both of us worked. I had just started my business and my wife had a 9-to-5. We decided that there would never be perfect conditions for us to get married and we couldn't wait any longer. Though we weren't making a lot of money, we knew that we could make it together. My mother-in-law never ceased to let me know that her daughter was way out of my league. I loved her daughter and I never minced words about my intentions with her. I was going to marry her and we would build a relationship together. As I said, I had just started my business and it had not picked up yet. My wife was the one that supported me and even nudged me to start. She had a high-paying job, so she was more financially stable than I was. I knew my business's potential and we believed that we could pull through. Despite my mother-in-law's disapproval, we went ahead and got married. I was so grateful that my wife wasn't a materialistic person. The first few years of our marriage were tough. I'm not going to lie. I contributed very little to our income and I was afraid that it would significantly impact our relationship. But it didn't. I love my wife so much, and whenever I think of the sacrifices she made for me and how she supported me even when it wasn't comfortable, I'm in awe. We both really wanted kids, but decided that until we got it together, we were not going to bring any kids into the world for the first few years. In our second year of marriage, my business had a big break and we started to do really well and have been scaling ever since. Now my wife doesn't even have to work if she doesn't want to. I had tried to persuade her to stop working, but she wouldn't stop because she said that she would feel miserable not having to work and be productive. Since my finances started booming, my mother-in-law became happier with me and was always happy when we gave her gifts. She would usually mention how my wife was my lucky charm and I needed to be grateful that she let me marry her. So annoying. As far as I know, my mother-in-law and her husband are separated, but I didn't know the details then. I knew that he was not in the picture and no one really talked about it. My mother-in-law got engaged and her wedding was in a few months. She told me to pay for it and that it was the least I could do for her because she let me marry her daughter. Again, with that statement, she was ordering me to spend my money on her. It was my money, and she had no right to. All she could do was ask me politely, and if it was something I could do, I would definitely do it for my wife's sake. I didn't like my mother-in-law, and she didn't like me either. She only liked my money, so why would she think I'd be willing to sponsor her wedding? She was insulting about it, and I thought that she would leave me alone if there was no marriage. One evening, the guys in the family went out. Somehow, my mother-in-law's wedding came up, and my brother-in-law told me about his dad. He left because his mom was horrible to him and cheated on him. That didn't sound right. He said that he just wasn't home anymore. One day, he picked his things and left. He was a teenager, so he understood what was happening, and he blamed his mom for everything. He also said that he was the only one who knew this. His sister was still really young, so she didn't have the details of what had happened. She only knows what her mother told her, which was a lie. My brother-in-law recently contacted his dad, though. He didn't tell anyone else. He wasn't in support of his mom's new marriage. He told his dad, and he was surprised because they never got a divorce. They simply separated and kept it like that. They were not married to each other, but since they were not divorced either, they couldn't marry anyone else. My mother-in-law was still as annoying as ever, so I told her fiancé, and he called off the wedding. Mother-in-law had lied about the real reason that she separated from her husband, and she also omitted the fact that she didn't get a divorce. My wife didn't know this either, but she hates me now for what I did. She said I had no right to interfere in her mother's marriage. I know I should feel remorseful because what I did wasn't pleasant, but I actually don't. My mother-in-law tried to salvage the whole situation, but everything backfired on her. The fact that she had lied about why her husband left and wasn't open about the fact that they were only separated but not divorced. She cheated on her husband several times. Her fiancé was disappointed and couldn't go through with the wedding anymore. My wife, on the other hand, wouldn't speak to me. She packed her things to go to her mom's house, and she took the kids with her. I thought it was one of those times that she would be angry with me, but we would make it up in no time. To my surprise, this was not what was happening. She refused to speak to me, and all my attempts at making things right with her failed. Her mom, who never liked me, is not making things easier either. Well, I don't blame her, because I did destroy her chances of getting married to her fiancé. My brother-in-law didn't care that I destroyed his mother's plans to get married. He didn't think that she should in the first place, but he thought I should have told him what I would do with the information. I'm worried that I may have jeopardized my own marriage trying to destroy my mother-in-law's as a form of revenge. It's not like I didn't have the money. I could have sponsored the wedding, but I didn't want to. Then again, looking at it from the flip side, my mother-in-law was going to deceive an unsuspecting man into marrying her, even though she knew that she wasn't divorced and wasn't supposed to get married. The relationship with my mother-in-law is worse. She banned me from being anywhere near her. The good news is that my wife came back home after 2 weeks. My brother-in-law has spoken to her on my behalf since she wasn't responding to me. He reminded her that she loved me and we had built a lovely family together. And while he doesn't really care for what I did, he understands that she didn't like it and maybe I should have told her. He asked her not to think about their mom, but her fiancé too. The marriage was doomed from the beginning because it was based on lies. Their mom had also lied to her about the real reason that their dad left. And he didn't say anything to her at the time because he thought it would help her cope if she thought it was their dad's fault, when in reality, their mom was the problem. I wasn't expecting her when she came home. I apologized, and she forgave me, but told me never to hide anything from her again. I also mentioned that I was also not comfortable with the fact that she expected me to sponsor the wedding, even though she knew I didn't want to. I thought that she would protect me from having to be a bad person in the eyes of her mom. Well, before I destroyed everything, I wasn't a kiss-ass and wasn't going to do my mother-in-law's biddings so she would like me more. She made it clear from the beginning that I didn't deserve to be part of the family, and she treated me as such. But because I was now wealthy, she could tolerate me. My wife said that she understood perfectly how I must have felt, and she was sorry that she was not sensitive to it. She made me promise to see if I could fix the problem that I had caused. It was challenging to get hold of my mother-in-law's fiancé, since he deliberately avoided everyone related to my mother-in-law. But I promised my wife, so I had to keep trying. When I finally did, I told him that I was sorry for springing up the news on him like that, and that maybe it wasn't my place to tell him. He wasn't annoyed at me, but grateful that I had told him the truth. I let him know that my mother-in-law loved him from my observation, and maybe she didn't know how to handle the whole situation, so she kept putting it off until it was too late. I asked him if he could give her another chance, and this time it would be right because I believed that she would be divorced by then, and they could really get married. Sadly, he refused. He was someone who had been betrayed a lot, so he couldn't move on from this. My mother-in-law got a divorce from her husband, but I don't think she'll be getting back with her fiancé. After many months, I was allowed around her because my wife spoke to her about the fact that she was also wrong. I wouldn't have had anything against her if she didn't have something to hide. She also expressed her disappointment that she lied to her about the real reason that she and her dad separated. It made her dislike her dad and not give him opportunities to be in her life when he wasn't actually the enemy. She let her know that we had all made mistakes, and she wouldn't let her isolate me for my mistakes, and if she disagreed, we wouldn't be coming around anymore. My mother-in-law accepted and that's how I got the chance to apologize to her. It was awkward. We don't have the best relationship, but at least we're not fighting each other, and I can live with that because I still think she is annoying. YTA, like your wife said, you had no right to destroy what could have been a good marriage. You only did it out of spite, not because you really cared about the truth coming out.
Next story.
Some background. My parents divorced when I was 10 because Dad quit his job and refused to work so he could gamble and drink all day. Our country has crappy laws about child support, so Mom had to support my sister and me on her own. Growing up, I tried reconnecting with my dad, but it felt like all effort to reconcile was far from me. So I eventually gave up and minimized contact. I kept in touch with Dad's side of the family, his siblings and my cousins. I have a good relationship with them. Fast forward to now. My sister and I are living comfortable lives. Our parents remarried. My mom married a nice man and they live overseas. 5 years ago, Dad married a girl who's the same age as my younger sister. She was horrible. Whenever my sister would reach out to our dad, she'd get pissed and accuse my sister of trying to steal him. They have a son, and I've been nice to him. But because our dad's wife continued her rotten streak, my sister and I decided to cut ties with them. Dad's mom died last year. A few months ago, my aunt, Dad's older sister, who is in charge for their parents' assets, called to tell us about our grandmother's will. Our grandmother is also dead, BTW. All our grandparents' assets have been divided among grandkids, and I got my grandparents' house, the house where my father and his family live. Since I live miles away from the said house and have no plans of moving there, my aunt suggested that I sell it and keep the money for myself. My aunt was pretty insistent that I sell the house because she said it's what my grandmother would want. My dad neglected her during the last years of her life and put her in a home. He also apparently sold her burial lot to buy drugs. So I agreed to sell the house since it's my inheritance after all. I haven't sold the house yet, but I called my dad to tell him about it so that they could start looking for a house. I wanted to give him a heads up and told him that they can stay as long as I don't have a buyer yet. My dad was obviously not pleased, but he didn't argue. Meanwhile, his wife got angry and called to scream at me, saying that I was being selfish and I didn't need the house. She let slip that her parents and siblings also lived there, so basically freeloading off of it. She tried to make me feel guilty because now they have to rent. I ignored her. Then she went on harassing me via text and called me names. At this point, I got pissed, so I told her that if she doesn't stop harassing me, I'll have them evicted ASAP, even if no one is buying the house yet. My dad found this out, and he told me I was an AH to his wife. His siblings found out, and they had my back. They said that his wife was never nice to them, and apparently she's the one who persuaded my dad to remove my grandmother from her own house and put her in an elderly home so her own family can move in. AITA? NTA. You haven't done anything wrong, and it was nice of you to let your dad know in person. I would agree, evict them immediately, and I would suggest having it professionally repaired and cleaned before selling. I would imagine it might be in a bad state.
Next story.
I, 37, female, divorced my ex-husband, 38, 9 years ago. We got married when we were both 19 after dating for 3 or so years. We ended up divorcing because in my mid-20s, I started putting on a lot of weight. I was really stressed from work and had poor mental health. I had a bad relationship with food, basically my entire life, and developed terrible BED. When I married my husband, I weighed about 120 pounds, but right before we divorced, I weighed 240. My husband sat me down after the first 40 or so and told me that he was concerned about my health and said that if I kept gaining weight, he wouldn't be attracted to me anymore. Hearing this devastated me, but I decided to really try to lose weight. It didn't work though. If anything, trying to diet just made it worse, as I started feeling guilty eating at all, which led to more binging. We talked and decided divorce would be best. I don't have any regrets, nor do I hate him. I get where he was coming from. We didn't have kids, so the divorce was easy, and I haven't spoken to him in years. Now, I weigh 220, am married, and have 2 kids. Recently, I was at the mall, and I ran into my ex-sister-in-law. It was the first time I've seen her in many years. We always got along fairly well, so it was nice to see her. We chatted for a few minutes. At some point, she said something along the lines of, "I was always surprised that it ended between the two of you the way it did." I asked what she meant, and she said that my ex had told his side of the family that I had an affair, which obviously wasn't true. Admittedly, I was very upset. I didn't understand why he felt the need to portray me as a cheater instead of telling the truth, which isn't even that bad. So I told her what really happened. My ex-sister-in-law seemed genuinely surprised and said that she had no idea. I told her it was fine and it didn't bother me, but that I wished that he would have told the truth from the start. I went home and didn't think much about it. To my shock, my ex-husband called me upset. He asked why I told his sister that. I guess the truth has gone around most of his family and is even causing problems in his current marriage. I told him I was sorry that this was happening, but that what I said was the truth. I honestly do feel really bad, though. I don't talk to him or his family ever, and it would have basically zero impact on me if they remembered me as the adulterer ex for the rest of my life. I didn't realize that they would react so strongly to the truth, though. AITA? NTA. He lied. You never need to play the bad guy when someone lies about you because they are too cowardly to tell the truth and are afraid that they will look bad.